Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Rockies Daily. I'm your host, Scott Ayers, where we talk all things Colorado Rockies. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more videos where we talk about what's going on in the offseason, the moves that the Rockies have made, and the moves that we wish they did make, because there has been a few throughout this offseason. And talking about it today, of course, we're focusing on first base once again. One of the big things that the Rockies had coming into the offseason was pretty much every position need. And we'll note on it in the next segment. But the Rockies have signed some minor league deals to try to get some depth at the infield position. Something we talked about yesterday, though, was Murakami signed with the Chicago White Sox for like a 2-year, $35 million deal. A deal that felt pretty gettable for the Colorado Rockies in terms of being smart with spending. Murakami was expected to sign for over $100 million and instead gets signed to a really friendly deal. And I do think there's still some more of those friendly deals out there. And we talk about Rhys Hoskins, someone that we've mentioned on the show before, but again, would be a really solid fit. And now there's reporting that he isn't even demanding a very big contract. It's looking around a 1-year, $10 million deal for someone like Rhys Hoskins, who's coming off an ACL injury from a couple seasons ago. But for Colorado, that's a perfect deal. That is another deal that makes sense and that they should absolutely pursue, because they don't need a long-term solution at first base with Charlie Condon at the AAA level, but they do need someone for the next season or two. And Hoskins definitely fits that mold. He would provide a solid bat to the lineup and would just make sense in general for the Rockies to add. You get a veteran leader, and it just, that's one I think the big question marks that the Rockies front office has had. There's clearly a strategy to get some of these other guys to minor league deals to see what they've got left. But an opportunity to sign someone for a deal that's relatively cheap, that isn't gonna hurt you if Hoskins struggles or just isn't able to perform at the major league level. A 1-year, $10 million deal doesn't hurt you. Like it doesn't affect the grand scheme of what you're trying to build in the future, and it also doesn't take away from building. I think there's sometimes this conception that, hey, in order for these young guys to develop, you just need to let them play at the major league level. And there is some truth to that. However, you also want to see them perform well at the minor league level. Let them gain some confidence before you kind of throw them into the fire at the major league level. Because we got a couple examples of that. Of some of the young guys getting brought up maybe a little too early and just not being able to perform at the major league level. So Rhys Hoskins, I think, is a move that makes sense. It's affordable. It is just a surefire way to help your lineup. And I think it'd be silly for the Rockies not to make that move, or just a first baseman in general. I think that makes sense during this free agency period. They did make a move, though. They signed Vimael Machin, and he is a minor league player, was with the Orioles last year, hit about 286, and really has been kind of a journeyman just throughout minor league baseball. He played at the major league level for a couple of seasons back in like 2022, but since then he hasn't made an appearance and has been at the minor league level since 2023. So 24 and 25, he just played minor league baseball, but in minor league he had 505 plate appearances, had about 480 slugging, 286 batting average. So again, he can play anywhere in the infield, and he joins Nicky Lopez and Chad Stevens, two other guys that are kind of on these non-guarantees that could shore up the infield. It's hard to say, though, just because none of them have really performed at the major league level at a successful rate. And so it makes sense, though. You can see what the front office is doing. They see that there is a need for infield support, and this is just another way of going about it, is signing a couple of guys that might be able to play at the major league level, especially because there was such a big struggle at second base and third base and first base. I mean, let's face it, really outside of shortstop, you could probably take any of these minor league guys and give them a chance at the major league level. So that's going to be one thing to follow, are these three guys that the Rockies have brought in, Machín, Lopez, and Stevens, because at this rate, I mean, it could be a bit of a roller coaster of who we see brought into the lineup. There's not a ton of guaranteed everyday guys right now for Colorado. And because of that, it gives these guys a chance. So it's another win-win scenario for the Rockies in terms of signing guys to these minor league deals, because if they perform well, hey, that's even better. And if they don't perform well, you're not losing anything. So I get these kind of signings. I think as just a baseball fan and a sports fan, you want to see more for your team, but these make sense as you're starting and continue to build things out. But we do go from the guys that they signed to a guy that they had last year, and Amador, he did not have a good season last year. It was a very, very disappointing season, which is surprising because at the AAA level, he hit 478 slugging, had 11 home runs. He was named an all-star for the Pacific Coast League. I mean, by all counts, he was great in AAA and at the minor league level. He was a really exciting player for the Rockies to have, and when they brought him up last season, he was just downright bad in 41 games. Hit 177, had a 265 slugging, had a single home run and 10 RBIs. It just wasn't that production that the Rockies were expecting. It kind of goes back to what I was mentioning before of maybe he just wasn't ready to be playing at the major league level. But it's just surprising because of all the success he had in the minor leagues. And so for Amador, it is someone that really needs to show some growth this season. And we've talked about that for other young players on this Rockies team. But when you're a bad team that's tanking, one of the bright spots is typically, hey, we've got some young guys that can really play. And the beauty of last year for how awful it was is it really did give you kind of a look behind the curtain to see what do we have coming. And I think Amador was one of those guys that there was a lot of excitement around. And there is still some excitement there, but it is not nearly the same. He struggled at the major league level, and now in the Dominican League, where they play this time of year, he's still really struggling at the plate. He's batting 182 and has a 273 slugging. So to be below the Mendoza line, right, and not to be able to even bat 200, which that isn't the perfect measure of a good hitter, but I mean, batting 182 and you don't have any slugging in your bat, that's a bit of a problem. And you would hope in the offseason, the offseason is meant to instill confidence into some of these players that maybe they struggled. Chase Dollander even talked about it, right? He was looking forward to the offseason, getting some confidence in his four seam, come back stronger than ever. And that's great to hear. It's just a little bit more concerning when there's a guy who goes into the offseason after struggling at the major league level, and he struggles in the offseason as well. That just doesn't bode well for confidence. So Amador could be one of those guys that we see, maybe he gets sent down to the minors at some point. We'll see. But it is a little concerning as a Rockies fan, especially because there's so many young infielders. And there's this idea of bringing in some new young infielders some point next season as well, or being called up to the major league level. So development is key during this time for the Rockies. Wins and losses, they hurt as a fan, but in reality, the biggest thing is developing these guys to produce a productive baseball team that can actually win games. And if you're losing games and you're not seeing much development, that's concerning, especially with the Rockies farm system being ranked in the 20s right now. So it's not like they have a bunch of top 100 guys that they're going to be able to go to. A lot of those guys have been called up and have had their struggles, right? Zach Veen is another. He has struggled at the major league level. Chase Dollander, we've talked about. he struggled. He had an up and down season, but I do feel confident with him. I really do think he's going to be a really solid pitcher for the Rockies. But for some of these bats, it's a little concerning. So for the Rockies, they need to be able to develop these guys, but they have to play well. And so I think for Amador, he's going to get the chance to play. It's just a matter if he's going to be built for it or not. And finally, let's end the show on a positive note in terms of just talking about possibilities for the Colorado Rockies. And I want to end with talking about a player who, by all accounts, is loved by Rockies fans, and that's DJ LeMahieu, who was released in the middle of last season. He's been dealing with a calf injury, but I think he fits that mold for first base. He wouldn't be able to play second. He wouldn't be able to play third. He doesn't have that same mobility he once had. However, even in his season where he dealt with injuries, he still hit about 265. His slugging and OPS were just way down from in 24 and 25 compared to previous seasons. But talk about just like the perfect 1 year transition where you bring in a guy who should have been a Rocky his entire career, but unfortunately just due to poor management, he wasn't. Just the ability to have him for a season, it just would be almost poetic justice. Even if he only hit 210 with 200 slugging and had like 15 RBIs all year, I really wouldn't care. It'd be like, we got our guy back. We got I think one season with the Rockies, top 15 in MVP voting, which, I mean, that's not really saying much, but really, LeMahieu is, as Dick Monfort said, the one that got away. They let him go. They signed Daniel Murphy in place of him, and it just immediately felt like the beginning of the downfall for the Rockies during that stretch where they had some really good teams. And so the opportunity to bring back LeMahieu on a single-year deal, he'd be cheaper than Rhys Hoskins. You're looking at a deal that could be, just a couple $1 million, right, for a single season. So DJ LeMahieu coming back to Colorado would be everything that is right for Rockies baseball, mainly because they love signing old guys who maybe aren't at the peak of their power anymore, but also just to sign someone that in reality should have been a Rocky for his entire career. But he'd be another option at first base alongside Rhys Hoskins and the many other players that we've talked about on this show. But until next time, I'm Scott Ayers. I hope you liked this episode. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. We're getting close to Christmas, so we're going to take a few shows off here pretty darn soon. But until then, I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care, and we'll see you next time.